Okay, can everybody hear me? Okay, sounds good. Thanks so much. My name is Scott Mingus. I'm from York, Pennsylvania. Had a chance to, a few years ago, work with my good friend Eric Wittenberg and write a book on the Second Battle of Winchester. You know how difficult it is to write a book on a battlefield when one of the key parts of the battlefield you can't walk on? I mean, I had to stand at this fence with a telephoto lens and kind of imagine what it would have been like, and told my wife if I had any guts I would have crossed the fence and walked around here, but I don't want to be in a Virginia jail. Trespassing is not my suit. So now we finally get to come on the property to begin with. Let's step back in time. It's June 1863. Winchester, Virginia, typical Valley Turnpike town. The United States Army's put 8,000 troops in and around Winchester, 3 divisions of the 4th Corps, commanded by this fella, Robert Houston Milroy. He's an Indiana politician. He's not a professionally trained soldier. He's a Republican. He's a good friend of Abraham Lincoln. One thing Milroy does right is he befriends the great politicians. And when Abraham Lincoln is elected at the Chicago Democratic or Republican Convention, it's Robert Milroy and his good friend Oliver Morton, the soon-to-be governor of Indiana, deliver Indiana for Lincoln. Lincoln never forgets this. Lincoln's the ultimate politician. And so he rewards his friend Robert Milroy with political patronage appointments. By 1863, Robert Milroy is a major general in the United States Army. As mentioned, he's got 8,000 men in and around Winchester, but they haven't been doing much fighting. In fact, they've been here since January of 1863, and other than scattered small little patrols of Confederate cavalry, you haven't seen an enemy soldier. This is the backwater of the war. In fact, Winchester is considered such an unlikely target by Milroy that he allows many of the men and officers to bring their wives, their families, their sweethearts to Winchester. He kicks out a number of the pro-Confederate people from their houses, takes over their homes, and puts his own officers in Winchester's civilian houses. Brings down settlers from places like York, Pennsylvania, where I live today. Brings settlers in from Delaware, in fact, so that the men have familiar food, familiar surroundings. That all changes in mid-June of 1863, when Robert Milroy is going to find to his shock on June 12, 1863, that a Confederate cavalry patrol south of Winchester on the Valley Turnpike has been ambushed by 87th Pennsylvania Infantry in a battery of regular artillery. Prisoners from that fight are brought to Milroy, and they tell him they're from the Army of Northern Virginia. Now, the Army of Northern Virginia is not supposed to be anywhere near Winchester, Virginia. Last time they were spotted, elements of it are near Brandy Station, down near Culpeper, and the rest of the Army is believed to be still at Fredericksburg. No, no, no. 1/3 of the Confederate Army of Northern Virginia is now in Winchester, en route, coming here. The very next morning, on June 13th, 1863, Milroy starts receiving a flurry of messages from the United States government. His commander's in Baltimore, and his commander's commander is in Washington, D.C. at the War Department. And you can imagine the delay in sending military messages from Washington to Baltimore and eventually through Harper's Ferry to Winchester. Milroy doesn't get this flurry of messages until later in the day. And those messages include a warning from his friend Abraham Lincoln to General Schenck in Baltimore: get Milroy out of Winchester, the noose is tightening. Because the U.S. Army War Intelligence now says a fight at Winchester is imminent. This is not a defendable town. Winchester's got way too many modes of access. Way too many ways the Confederate Army could approach Winchester. And Milroy, on 13th, the battle begins, Second Battle of Winchester. It's a 3-day battle, by the way. It's the second largest battle of the Gettysburg campaign, the entire campaign. It's also a 3-day battle like Gettysburg. Day 1 of the battle starts where Kernstown, Virginia is. They're going to fight in and around the Pritchard farm, and they're going to march almost a mile northward as the Confederates continue to drive Milroy's men backwards. 12th West Virginia, 12th Pennsylvania Cavalry, 116th Ohio, 122nd, 123rd Ohio, all pushed back until 2 Ohio regiments will finally stop the Confederate advance, as does nightfall. June 13th goes into the books. But Milroy stubbornly decides, I'm not leaving town. I'm going to stand and fight. And on June 14th, Sunday afternoon, Milroy's pulled most of his men back into fortifications south of town and several forts on the north and northwest of town. Milroy, believing that Winchester's really not the target. Remember I said, Winchester has always been considered an undefensible town. Milroy believes the real action is going to happen at Harper's Ferry, several miles up this way. That's where, and he's convinced the Confederates are going to bypass his troops at Winchester, and they're going to move towards Harper's Ferry. He's wrong. The Confederates want to attack Winchester. They want to attack Milroy a second day. And on Sunday, June 14th, 1863, Milroy's troops are going to suffer yet another disaster. He's going to lose forts west of town. West Fort, Battery number 6, both follow the Confederates. And again, only darkness stops the Confederates from totally overwhelming Milroy's men. That brings us to here. At 2 o'clock in the morning of Monday, June 15th, 1863, Bob Milroy finally decides maybe the War Department was right. Maybe I should get out of Dodge. Milroy abandons his wounded, abandons the women and children that have been coming down here, abandons much of his own soldiers that are sick in the hospitals. And Milroy decides, I'm going to bail. And they start walking out of the forts, the northwest of town. Where's my net? There it is, back here. Now, while this is going on, somebody else thinks Milroy's movement is going to happen. His name is Edward Johnson. He commands 1 division of the Confederate Army. Edward Johnson decides, you know, Milroy's going to try to slip out during the night. And he's going to try to beat Milroy to the punch. Because Milroy thinks, again, there are big attacks coming at Harper's Ferry. He also knows that Martinsburg, and you guys know where Martinsburg, West Virginia is. Martinsburg is gone. The Confederates have taken Martinsburg. Robert Rodes' entire division is sitting in Martinsburg. That road's blocked. There's only one way to Harper's Ferry. Anybody know how to get to Harper's Ferry from here? You get down to the Charlestown Road. Make a right turn on the Charlestown Road and start heading towards Harper's Ferry. That's Milroy's intention. And Johnson correctly says that's what Milroy's going to do. So now it's going to be a foot race in the middle of the night. Who can get to that intersection first? If Milroy can get there and make a right turn, he's going to try to head to Harper's Ferry. If he can't make the right turn down there, God bless him, because he's not going north. Not easily. So Milroy's got this problem that continues to develop here. Now, one of Milroy's men in the 10th Virginia, Corporal Theodore Locke, talks about this march. The night was a starlit one. The roads were mostly hidden in the shade of big overhanging trees. The boys, these Virginians, were on edge from the start, for they intuitively felt that something peculiar and important was ahead of them. What's ahead of them? Beating the Yankees to this intersection. Well, the Union forces, Milroy's abandoned his artillery, left every single cannon back in Winchester for the Confederates, spiked the guns, hammered iron spikes into them to prevent them to be used by the Confederates, dumped the ammunition down wells, and now he's marching his men, his fighting soldiers at least, on the Martinsburg Pike behind us. With that, let's go to our next stop.